restoration. It's time to get back on your feet. We are living in a time where people need hope. With our world seeming to be out of sync with the word of God, now is the time where we need to hear from God. Just this week, we had a situation in the schools where children were killed, and teachers and principals were killed, parents was killed. It's a time when the world needs hope. We are living in a time where domestic abuse is out of control. We have boyfriends and girlfriends and husbands and wives killing each other. It is time for the people to hear from God. We are living in a time where natural disasters is hitting the East Coast and other small countries. There's earthquakes in diverse places. Now is a time we need to hear from God. Flat out, people need hope. We are going through hard times, and it seems like our back is against the wall, but yet we still need to hear from God. In the Bible days, one would hear from God through the voices of his prophets. God would send direct messages to his prophets, and the prophets would give the messages to the people. Guess what? Today, God is still speaking through his prophets and through his prophetic word. So when we look at Malachi, we see that he was given a message from the Lord concerning our financial welfare here on earth. In order to understand Malachi's message, we must go back to the word about the people of Israel. Now look, Malachi was deemed as one of the minor prophets of the Bible. We see that Malachi was partial to the people of Israel. Back then, when God would give messages to the prophets, they were some deep and profound messages. Most of the time when God gave those messages, there seemed to be a lot of wrath before the blessing would occur. So Malachi was put in a position to get the people back in order, to get the people back on their feet. So when we look at this, Malachi was a member of distinct prophets that spoke on restoration. And when we see here, understand that in order for you to have a period of restoration, you have to have a period of recession. Understand that understand that in order for a period of restoration to take place, there had to be a period of destitute. There had to be a period of famine. There had to be a period of loss or poverty. Other words, you can't go through restoration if you haven't been through a recession. You can't get to the mountaintop unless you have gone through the valley. Last week, just a quick recap, in Pastor's message, he talked about tithing. It's a must. If you want to be blessed, learn how to give God what is his. God requires only 10% of your earnings. And when you give 10%, he makes you smarter with the 90%. When you don't tithe, you are subject to financial curses. Non-tithers are completely out of order. And due to curses of not tithing, every area in your life is vulnerable to be falling apart. But when you line up with the word of God regarding tithing, God has to bless you because he said so. He said, bring ye all tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me. He's saying, prove that what I'm saying I will do. See, look, we serve a God that don't lie. So guess what? If he said it, it's got to be done. So when we look at today's message, when we go forward to Malachi 3:11, it begins by saying this. It says, and I will rebuke the devourer for the sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine drop its fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And as I began to study, there's a lot of history in this particular text. When Malachi says, and he's speaking from God, he says, I will rebuke the devourer. He's talking about what happened years ago. See, the devourer in the Bible is declared to be the insects and plagues. We about to go somewhere with this, y'all. When we take a look at the text, we must be reminded of history about the plague of locusts. Joel, the first chapter, it reads, "And the word of the Lord came upon Job, the son of Pethuel. Hear this, O ye man, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been your days, or even in the days of your father?" And then he says, "Tell your children of it, and let your children tell your children, and their children another generation. That which the palmer worm had left, hath the locust eaten. And that which the locust had left, the cankerworm eaten. And that which the cankerworm had left, hath the caterpillar eating." I got to break this down to you. One, you have to understand the power of insects, the power of cankerworms, the power of caterpillars. What they do, they come and they eat off life. They eat off life. During this time, during this plague went on for years. And what it's saying here is that life was eaten away. And as I begin to think about that, we have to go back and analyze our personal lives, because I believe that some of us got some cankerworms that have been there for years. And it's been eating your life away. I want to paint a picture here for you this morning. Just imagine that you started off with 100. Then after the first section came, you only had 50. And then another section came, and you only had 30. And then another section came, and you only had 20. And by the time that fourth section came, you had nothing. And that's what the people were with at that time. They had nothing. Life had been eaten away, and they were just hanging on. And in our lives, I have to make this clear, in our lives, if we allow things like cankerworms to come in, eventually you will have nothing. See, you got to stand up and you got to have authority and speak against everything that the enemy is trying to throw at you. If your finances are under attack, begin to speak to your bank account. If your health is under attack, begin to speak to your Growing up, I was the youngest sibling. And I was always subject to having unwanted help from my older siblings. I can remember on Friday nights, Mama, when she was done doing hair in the beauty shop, she would take us to McDonald's. And oh, how I loved McDonald's. Not only would you get a good meal, but you also got a toy that came with that meal. And I can remember those were the days. Apparently, my older siblings thought I needed help eating my food. So they would take it upon themselves to eat my food. As time went on, I began to get mad. I got mad when Nikki would take my fries. I got mad when Adrian would eat the pickles off of my burger. So I began to stand up for myself. I would tell them and I would remind them, one day I'm going to be bigger than you, and I'm going to take your fries. I'm going to eat the pickles off of your burger. And, we were a strange family. They would just laugh on me and continue to pick on me. And I say this because, like then, I get mad when my stuff is taken. I get mad when the devil reaches into my Happy Meal box. Maybe I'm the only one here that you're tired of the enemy taking your stuff. But I get mad when he reaches in my Happy Meal box, when he takes my fries, when he takes the pickles off my burger, and when I see him playing with my toys. I get mad. So another question goes out is, have you been picking from the garden too early? When we look at the text, it goes on to say, all nations shall call you blessed. And as I begin to look at that thing, y'all, I've been called a lot of things in my life. I've been called short. I've been called fat. I've been called ugly. I've been called black. I've been called a lot of things. I've been called poor. I've been called broke. I've been called all that. But it's something when you line up with God. Because God has the power to change what people call you. I'm going somewhere with this. There may have been times when you were called everything but a child of God. Because of your predicament. Because of your situation. Because of your troubles. Because of your financial status. But when you put God in the midst and you become obedient to what he says, he has the power to change your name. We're going somewhere with this. See, when I look back in my Bible, I see Saul, who said he was the chief of sinners. And when he got obedient with God and he began to line up with God, what did God do? He changed his name. He changed his name. Saul went to Paul. When we look at Simon, when Simon was just a fisherman, he went by the name of Simon, but when he came in contact with God and he began to line up with Jesus Christ, his name had to change. Why? Because Simon was of old nature. Simon was the one who was quick with the tongue. Simon was the one who had some issues. Come on. Even when we go into the Bible, we see that when Peter began to act up, even Jesus called him by his old name because he's seeing old behavior. Look, some of you may have been called a cheater. Some of you may have been called all kind of names. But guess what? When God comes in the midst, he has to change your name. I can just imagine that back then these people were destitute. They were called poor. They were in a state of poverty. They were broke. They probably looked like bums, busted and disgusted. But when God comes on the scene, things got to change. So when we look here, I don't care what you have been called before you became a tither. But now you have to realize that your name is about to change. God is no longer calling you to be under a curse, but now he's calling you to be a blessed people. He's calling you to be a dignified people. He's calling you